So tier lists is where the big bugs are. And hating heat apparently. I guess that makes up for no one watching my Interactor video. Right, so I was away on vacation, I wasn't able to post in the last 2 weeks, and I decided to make the city tier list since it's what people seems to like and I don't want to lose any of my 3 loyal subscribers. So, okay, a few things about cities. There's basically 2 kinds, space cities and board cities. And cities within those categories function pretty similarly. The space ones, they all have the space tag and the city tag, and they usually just give you points and some form of production. And the board cities mostly give you mega crate production, 3 probably being the most usual, and they cost energy. Usually 1, sometimes 2. Now, you could argue they're somewhat similar. I usually see 2 or 3 greeneries around every city, and that's usually where the points are. But keep in mind that 2 cities that cost the same and one gives you 2 points directly. That one's obviously better because you don't have to do anything for the 2 points, whereas something like, a board city like Cupola City, you actually have to go and place 2 greeneries unless you can steal them from your opponent, but that's not that common. And in that case, it might be a little better because you're taking points from them. So it's a little different in that sense, and we'll see that when I get to the ranking. The other thing is that you really should never think of cities as economic builders, with very few exceptions. Because usually they don't pay off when you consider the energy cost. So you take something like a Cupola City, which is like the standard early game city that everyone plays. It costs 16, it's 19 for playing the card, and then it costs 7 more because of the energy. That's the average price of energy, I would argue. So that's 26, and it gives you 3 return, so it takes 9 generations to pay back. So it really won't pay off by the end of the game in most scenarios, unless you play it early or the game, like Gen 1, and then it will pay off by 1. Or if the game goes really long and you play Gen 2 or 3, but yeah, it's not gonna pay back. Just take it as a reduction on the cost itself, and never play it before actual economic building cards. Alright, so let's go over the categories and begin. So first of all, game breaking. Now, there's not going to be that many in this category. Because one thing I found is that cities are actually really mid in general. They're mostly all between good and slightly mediocre. Very few I would argue are great. Very few I would argue are terrible. Okay, next up, good early or good BV value. So good early cities are usually good for taking off space in the board, so basically for area control, like I said, not economic builder. But you do have to take into account the cost and the production that it gives you, because that's how much it pays back for itself. And then this is just decent early or decent VP value, pretty much the same as this one, but a little less. Situational potential, and there are a few cities that I think can be good in scenarios, but those scenarios tend to be a little rare, and there are some that can be great in some scenarios, but they tend to be even rarer, so that's sort of what I save this category for. But once you get to this category, you get into cities that I really don't play or see played as often. And then Mayor or Tharsis, these are cities that I only play basically for Mayor or even Tharsis. Then really bad, I rarely play them and mostly unusable. I didn't write unusable because I've used all the cities a lot, and that's mostly due to the fact that I used to play more cities like most beginner players do. And so I there's some cities I actually know really well and I have played a lot, and then over the years I realized, that is the reason I'm losing. So there's still a few scenarios where I think they're usable, but really not usable. And that's the other thing I wanted to bring up with these. It was probably the hardest tier list for me to make so far, because most of my experience playing with most of the city cards was when I was a worse player. So as a good player, I don't have as much experience playing these cards. But I did play them a lot when I didn't play as great, so it was hard to sort of convert that into a tier list. But let's begin. Okay, so starting off with capital, and I'm gonna put it here. Now it actually has probably the second highest VP potential. So you can do 3 oceans and 3 greeneries, or well, any number of oceans and greenery that combine for 6 surrounding tiles. So it can give you 6 points. Not usually the case. But you can often get 2 oceans and 2 greeneries, so 4 points is not out of the question. Now the main drawback, I would argue, is the double energy production, which can be really expensive, combined with the 26 cost. So if you add 14, that's a 40. For maybe 4 or 5 victory points, it's not the best ratio. The production is amazing. 5, but I don't often see this city come that early. You usually want to play it after the oceans are there. I mean, there's a 4 ocean requirement, but that's usually much faster than you can play it anyway. But you want the ocean, not just the 4 oceans, you want the oceans in the good spot where you can get 3 around it, which is not often the first spots in any of the maps where you see the oceans go. Maybe in Elysium you can get 2 pretty quickly. But yeah, you generally want to wait for 3 because it's a free victory point instead of placing a greenery, and it's better if they're already placed. And if they're not, you want to guarantee that you can place the ocean and not that your opponent's going to place it somewhere else. So despite the potential, I think the price and the double energy and the fact that the production is not that useful late, I'm going to say it's decent and not good. Definitely not game breaking, and I wouldn't call it situational because it's just played off. If that 3 ocean spot is free, people are going to play it and you're going to get 4 victory points for it. It's still a very expensive 4 victory points. Next up, Coporate Stronghold. Now this is a really fun card, but lately I don't play it as often. I used to play this a lot more because it was the cheapest city. But you'll find that you don't get neither the victory points back as much as you want or the production. So this one actually costs 14, 21 with the energy, so you will get like 6 mega credits back if you play this really early, but then it's not worth it. And you will get a point back if you play this really early, but there's just like you can just invest that 21 in a game building card and that will pay for a point card late in the game. So really good for Mayor. And if you're Tharsis, I mean, it's 3 cheaper and it gives you 4 production, so it's actually a decent economy builder. And you're probably going for Mayor anyway, so yeah, but other than that, I don't really play this more often. Well, and there's a scenario, also all cities are playable if your opponent is leaving greeneries exposed. If you see 3 greeneries, yes, play this immediately. You've guaranteed yourself 1 point back, and you'll probably get a few more, but no one ever leaves 3 greeneries exposed. 2, it's common. 3 is very rare. Okay, next up is Cultural Metropolis, and this is a fun one. So, but it's kind of weird. So it's the standard -1 energy plus 3 mega credits, but it also gives you 2 delegates. Now the main drawback is that you need Unity in power, and Unity is probably the least ground focused party. So you're not gonna have 2 delegates there. If you're playing cities, you probably never wanna waste your delegates into Unity. But if someone else gets it into power, then it's a good turn to play it and put your 2 delegates into the greens, so you can, maybe place a greenery next to it next point, or whatever you find it convenient that turn after. Uh, it's still a little expensive, but I still think there's situational potential because you can, arrange a great turn next turn, and that's something you can do a lot with Turmoil. Still very rarely, I think this is game breaking or anything, so the potential is not that high. But it does lend itself for some good combos. And it's a little high on price, definitely. I mean, when the 2 delegates is like 10, so not that much in that sense, but yeah, still a little if you might not have a use for both. Okay, now next what I like to call the quintessential city, and that's Cupola. And it's gonna be the highest. It's really good early. Best city for securing some area control early. Like I said, I used this one for the example. It doesn't pay back often, but it does pay back some of its own cost. And you can secure yourself a nice spot on the board for a reasonable price early and get your victory points later on. So this is sort of, to me, like the quintessential city. And yeah, I'm gonna put it. It's probably the best early one, and I'm gonna put it there. Okay, next up, Dawn City. And Dawn City's, I really like the victory point value in this one. Not crazy about the production, and the cities in space, like I said, they're pretty meaningless. And that's really, I mean, I'm going to rant, but I really hate the Venus board because it does nothing. So you place a city in the Venus board, and yeah, there's a couple of cards that interact with cities in play. That's it. But yeah, you'll find out later that they discover that it's the same placing them anywhere in space. So yeah, but yeah, it gives you titanium production, so less flexibility, but it's the same value with less flexibility. Okay, so 18 for 3 points, that's 6. 7 for the energy, that's 25. For 3 points, you're paying 8 per point, which is a little high. But because you can play this at any point in the game, the energy might... So you can play this late, unlike Cupola or Coporate Stronghold. Then, yeah, the energy might be much cheaper. I think it's a decent value for 3 points. Around 8, so it's getting high, but it's good, and it's 3 whole points. And then the science requirement is not that big. This isn't my favorite point city, but it's pretty decent, I would say. Okay, Dome Crater. Now, Dome Crater is gonna go in situational potential. I'm gonna put it behind Cultural Metropolis. Should I? No, I'm gonna put it ahead of Cultural Metropolis. Now, the situation is basically you have 3 plants. And that's not uncommon, and that's why I'm gonna put it ahead. If you had 3 plants, you pick up 2 with the city, that's usually gonna be available early. And then you get 3 more, and you place your greenery in the same generation, and it also gives you a point. So, I mean, it's still situational, and it's very expensive at 24. But the fact that it can help you save your plants from some evil doer or some asteroids, I think that's really the use for this city. Having 3 or more plants, then picking them up and placing them, picking up 5 plants with 1 card is really good, and you can protect them immediately. So it's a card that really comes with itself. This can be actually, the requirement can actually be a little too restrictive. And like I said, it's one of the most expensive cities. It's 34. So yeah, maybe too much. And it can be even too much for a Ecoline early, but it's still a pretty good card for Ecoline. You just have to plan around to be able to play it. Okay, now Field Cap City is not a card I've ever played. And I had a really hard time evaluating it. And the more I looked at it, the less I liked it, because it's just a combination of things that's hard to need. Now you'll notice you can compare it with Dome Crater, and you can see, okay, it gives me the city, it gives me the 3 plants, and it doesn't cost the energy. It actually gives me the energy, but I would argue that's not that impressive because you're probably early you're not gonna be able to play anything else after you play 29, and then you might get tapped. That's all it might accomplish, getting you tapped. So I don't really like that. And Dome Crater was really up there in terms of cost, and I know it's 7 more for the energy, but this one at 29 is just really high, and it does give you the 3 plants, but yeah, I could be wrong on this one. It also doesn't give you the point, obviously, but you don't care about the point that early. But I just think 29 is too high, and the 2 that it pays back is too low, and the energy, I don't like leaving energy exposed early, so at first I thought it was a better Dome Crater, and after looking at it for a while, I thought it was just very hard to find scenarios where I would use this. So yeah, really bad. Ganymede Colony, that obviously go here. Now, I'm not gonna call it game breaking. I didn't call it game breaking when I did the Jovian tier. It's probably closer in this one because Jovian cards might be a little better. But because this is still situational in terms of that you need Jovians, I'm not gonna call it game breaking, but it's close. It can easily provide you, 4 points, which is more than Down City, and it doesn't cost energy. It comes with 1 for sure, but you'll get 2 or 3 easy, 4 or 5 probably if you're going Jovian. Assuming you're able to conceal it, and it's also a good play for stealing Mayor because it doesn't cost energy, and you can pay with Titanium, which you might have some extra laying around. So yeah, Ganymede Colony, the best point city by far. Okay, next up, Gyropolis, and this, I once thought this was one of the best cards in the game, and I've rarely played it in, the last couple of years. And the reason I thought it was great was because I used to play 1v1 really, 14 generation games where Gyropolis would give you 10 production and just pay back for itself in 2 generations and be insane, and then maybe you played Robotic Warforce on it or something, and but despite all the potential, and so I am gonna put it here in situational potential, it is really expensive. It's compared to the capital, so you have the same energy cost, and then you need 5 combined Earth and Venus stacks just to be the same as capital, minus, it costs 6 more, but capital also gives you points for oceans, so that's much better. So yeah, I mean, maybe a Terractor Ponluna hand with Earth Office, and this can, be really good early, but and really you have to combine it with Venus for it to be really good, because there are a lot of Venus stacks, and when you play only with the Venus expansion, they're really common, and they're a lot that are good early, and they synergize well with Earth. But I just don't play this as often anymore, maybe because I don't go for a Venus strategy a lot, but yeah, it's just too expensive for what it provides. Maybe if it had 1 energy, it'd be a lot more playable. Okay, another situational one, Immigrant City, right behind Dome Crater. Now, this is my favorite Tharsis combo card. It's really good with Tharsis. With any other corporation, it's kind of risky. So it actually gives you -1 energy and money production because it gives you 1 back with its own ability. But it is nice to sort of annul Tharsis' ability, or to combo with Tharsis, or if you know that you're going for Mayor, this should be your first city, and you're actually going to get, for sure, 2 production back. So it's going to leave you at -1 when you play it, and then when you play 2 other cities, you'll get the positive production. So yeah, it situationally it can be good, but it's kind of a risky play if you don't know what your opponent's doing and you don't have any more cities in your hand. And it's cheap, which is good for Mayor, but it's the -1 can be really, really horrible. So yeah, situational potential. Okay, Lava Tube Settlement. I hate this city. And just compare it to Cupola. So Lava Tube gives you 1 less production. It doesn't have the 9% requirement, but Cupola is an early city anyway. And it costs 1 less, and it also has a placement production that you can only place on volcanic areas, and that there aren't that many good volcanic areas for cities. The good city spots tend to be other spots. And so if you get it late, which is the advantage it's supposed to have over Cupola, then you really want to place it next to a greenery or one of your opponent's greenery, and you don't want to have another constraint on it. It might be the case that the volcano spot is good, but yeah, it's just really bad value. These two will never pay back. You're gonna stay at -10 probably when you place this city. -10 mega credits for, you know, maybe a victory point. That's really, really bad. So yeah, I really hate it, and it's kind of stunning because this came in Prelude that, you know, they couldn't make something closer to Cupola City. This should really be 3. It should really be 3. It's just too bad. It would have been nice to have another decent early city card, and Lava Tube Settlement is just a card I hate. Okay, Luna Metropolis. That's gonna be pretty similar to Gyropolis, but better. Why? It gives you 2 points. Now you can't place greeneries around it because it's one of the Venus cities, but it's better to just get the 2 points right away. Even if you have more potential, you can get 3 or 4 with Gyropolis. And it doesn't cost energy. So, I mean, it costs 1 more, but the energy price here is insane. And it doesn't give you 4 Venus tax, but most of the time, like the majority of the bonus on Gyropolis is going to be Earth tax. So, I mean, this also has the potential to be like a crazy income card if you get all the Earth tax, with the added bonus that you don't have to invest that much into it, and you get the 2 points right away. You don't even have to go ground. You can be on an Earth strategy and just play it as a point development card. Well, not early development, but mid-game development. Maxwell Base, my second favorite cards, and this one's really good. So you get 3 points. You don't get any production, you get the energy, but you can place a resource on any Venus card, and that includes Venus animals that give you a 1-to-1 ratio. There's 2. And if not, there's floaters, which will give you a 2-to-1, 1-to-2 ratio. But yeah, a little more expensive. It still costs energy. You want to play this last 2 generations maybe. But yeah, you're gonna get 3 to 5 points with it. Also, this requirement is really irrelevant because you want to play this late after you have a 1-player animal, or, you know, maybe a floater that you get 1 more point on. So you're gonna get 4. And if you get lucky with the animals, you get 5. If you do 5 points for 28, that's an average of between 5 and 6, which is really good. So this is actually a really good points card. And it's much better than the production in Down City, because you want to play this really late anyway. It's mostly a point card. So yeah, I'll take it. Okay, Noctis City. Noctis City, yeah, here. So yeah, a little worse than Cupola City. Now it is restricted in the Tharsis board. In the other ones, you can just take it as a slightly worse Cupola City with the no requirement advantage. But yeah, I would still rather have Cupola, the 2 cheaper, and I'm gonna play it early anyway. It's debatable whether the force placement of Noctis is bad on Tharsis, because unlike Lava Tube Settlement, which is actually not restricted in Hellas, I should have mentioned that, The Noctis spot in Tharsis is really good. You're usually gonna get a couple of greeneries there. You're probably gonna get two for the ocean that's usually placed at that point, which makes it the same cost as Cupola City in that case. Of course, you can also place Cupola City next to an ocean, so you know. But that Noctis spot is really good. And yeah, I'm not sure if it's actually a drawback to playing in Tharsis. I mean, it's obviously more flexible, but the fact that no one can take that spot and you can watch your opponent place greeneries with this card in hand and, you know, take 2 points at the end of the game from them, I actually kind of like that. 2 or 3 points. Usually one that you put your own, but I actually kind of like that. So I'm not too sure there. I do think it's worse than Cupola because it's a little more expensive. And in the other two boards, they're pretty much the same. Anyway, it's just the requirement and the difference. But I do like... Noctis City is the other... I would call maybe quintessential city. But more, I would save that more for Cupola. So I'll keep it at decent. Okay, Open City. Now, Open City, it's somewhat comparable to Dump Crater, but much worse, in my opinion. Why? Well, it comes down very late. 12% oxygen, which is two gens from the end, usually. Maybe the last one, even. It gives you one less plant, which is significant. And it gives you one more production, which is irrelevant. It also costs one less, which is also kind of irrelevant. So it's much worse than Dome Crater. I do use this. I'm gonna actually put it ahead here. I do use this late to pick up, you know, a point, a couple of plants, and maybe steal a greenery from my opponent. But it's rare. It is rare. You really should do your math on whether you need 2 plants before you play this. Often playing something else is going to give you more points. And you're not in such a danger of losing your plants to asteroids late in the game, which is why I really like Dome Crater. Because not just because the greenery, it's because it can save your 3 plants from getting blown up and turn them into early income. This one turns them just into points, and I really wish it would be cheaper and just give me less production, because I can't do anything with that production anyway. So it's nice that it gives you a point, but I would just call it really bad. Phobos, one of the hardest cards for me to rank, because you know, you see 3 VPs. Usually that's good, but it's actually pretty expensive at 28. So that's, again, compared to Dun is at 25 for the same, gives you the same production, and I am taking into account the energy there. So, yeah, I like it a little less than Dun City, basically, even though it doesn't have the requirement, but you don't want to play this early anyway. And if you draw it, Dun has a bigger discount. I mean, it's only a tier lower. It's pretty similar to Dun City, but I like Dun City a little more just because it's a little cheaper. And if you have the energy floating at the end, it's actually a lot cheaper. You might have used energy to produce heat, and in that case, then Dun City is much better than Phobos. So yeah, I think it's the worst of the point cities. It's still playable because it's a card with 3 points. Like if you see this in the draft in the last generation, you're probably gonna pick it up. Unless you have a bunch of Jovians that you're holding, but you're definitely not gonna pass that to your opponent. You're probably gonna pick it up and you're gonna try to play it. So as a mid-game development card, it's not great. It's not the worst. But yeah, as a points card, it's decent. Not too exciting. My favorite city, and incidentally the best one, and it's not really debatable, I think. The only game-breaking one, Research Outpost. Amazing early value. So costs 21, and if you play 21 cards base back for itself, which you will easily, it'll also give you points, and it gives you a science tag, the only city with a science tag. So this is by far the best city in the game. It does drop off near the end of the game because it does have a restriction that you can't play it next to anything. So it has to be surrounded by nothing. This is irrelevant at the beginning of the game because you can find great spots with nice resources to pick all over the board with nothing next to them. Near the end of the game, you're going to want to play your cities next to greeneries or oceans and greeneries, and you can do this with research outpost, so it's not the best late game city, but it's still really nice. It's 18. It doesn't require energy, and you can still place your greeneries around it, so there are scenarios where you can play this in the last gen. You have 2 greeneries to place nearby, and it combos with another city that you have close, and it's still playable. So even if it's not game breaking when you play it in the last turn for sure, but it's still playable despite it being such a great early game card. And the fact that it doesn't cost energy, so when you play the base game, I think this is the only city on Mars without an energy cost. It might be in the whole game, actually, except there's Field Cap City, which I already covered. But because energy is so hard to come by, and their standard project is not priced optimally, it's not the worst standard project, that makes it so much better that it's the only city that doesn't require energy. My favorite card to get with Tharsis. Maybe together with Immigrant City just because of the combo, but Research Outpost is better even with Tharsis, in all honesty. So yeah, only game breaking card, amazing card. Always take it, never pass it. Even if you're not going for cities, the discount alone is probably worth it. And the science tag. Well, not alone, but science tag with the discount. Okay, next up, Spaceport. So Spaceport is a different city. I'm gonna go ahead of Noctis. I think it's decent early. Now it's expensive, but it does give you 4 production, and it gives you an extra trade fleet, which is great. Now there are many scenarios where you can't use that trade fleet, and you also need a colony, but if you want a trade fleet, you probably have the colony. But there are many scenarios where you do want that extra trade fleet, and the 4 that production helps it pay back a lot. So paying 4 more than Noctis for an extra production and a trade fleet, it's just definitely better than Noctis. I'm not gonna put it ahead of the capital just because the capital has that huge victory point potential. So these are 2 very different cards, and they're hard to compare. But yeah, I do like Spaceport. I like all 3 cards that give you a nice extra trade fleet. This is my least favorite one, but still worth it. Trade fleets are great with colonies, and the production, I like that it's 4, and you can actually play this early, not because it's great for game building, but if you have enough to trade twice, and it actually pays back for itself nicely. Okay, Stanford Torus. Now, I have played with this city, but I've never actually seen it played. And I'm gonna say it's a Mayor Tharsis card. The victory point value at the end of the game, it's 7.5. It doesn't cost energy, so it's 15 by 2.7.5. And I don't know why I like this card so much less than Phobos. If you think about it, you're paying 13 for the extra point. But if you play Phobos a few generations from the end, like 2 generations, you produce the titanium 2 or 3 times. Then it's less. And so I can't really. I debated so much whether to put this higher, but I just never see me blocking or taking this unless Mayor is in play, which is why I'm gonna put it here. It's really nice. Probably the nicest city if you're looking for a city for Mayor. But other than that, really, I don't see why the victory points are not that significant. And yeah, it's okay end of game. You can play it end of game. But yeah, I'm not crazy about it. It's just I can't explain it really. I had this placed in 4 different categories. I ended up putting it here. I do think it's better than Coporate Stronghold, of course. But I only find that I play it for Mayor. I rarely keep it at any point in the game for the victory points, and there's no production. If you draw this at the end of the game and you have nothing better to play, then it's decent. It's 7.5 per point, which I think it's not great, but decent point ratio. Okay, Stratopolis. Sucks. Yeah, this is really bad. So it does give you production too, no energy cost, but the thing is that they sort of, the intent is sort of to get you to play this early, but it's so expensive at 25. And the production is not good enough. And then the points, okay. There are much better point cards or development cards that you can play early. You don't play something for points this early, and it doesn't give you that many. I know it's 2 on a Venus card, but it's only floaters. The best you can get is 1 to 2, I think. And on itself, like even, okay, you play this Gen 1, you put 20 on it, it gives you 6 victory points, but you wasted a whole generation on it, and it doesn't even pay back for itself. So it's not good enough. The production is not good enough early, and the point production is not good enough late. If you play these 3 generations from the end, it gives you 2 victory points. For a very expensive price, if you compare it to like Dawn City or Phobos, it gives you less points. If you have the other card, and you have to take into account that you have to take that into account, that you have to pick another card and pay for another card for these points to be worth more, then 3 generations from the end, it provides you the same as Dawn City with less production. It provides you less than Maxwell Base, and Maxwell Base is going to get another point. It provides you the same as Phobos, and again, this is more production. So yeah, it's a weird combination of things that can be really good but end up being really bad. Speaking of really bad, Underground City. I hate this city. I mean, they're insane. 2 energy for an extra production. So you basically, instead of the 3 standard production, you give me 4, but it's constrained by it being steel, and I have to pay an extra energy. And it also costs 18. Why is this so expensive? I really, this is the city that I played the least. And I'm embarrassed to say that I did play it a bunch. But I have not played this in a couple of years either. The only situation, again, greenery is laying around at the end of the game, and you have energy that you use for heat that you're not going to use anymore. Okay, then it's fine. You can get 2-3 points and steal points from your opponent. That's really nice. But this is too expensive, and the production is just never worth it. Like, you're never gonna enjoy getting to steal from this, because you pay so much for it early, and still is useless late. And it's also not that much when you play it late. So yeah, worst city in the game for me, Underground City. Still not as horrible as some of the cards I've seen in the other tiers. And Urbanized Area. Now I'm gonna say situational potential. And I found that this used to be like one of the cards that I went for a lot. Again, when I played with a lot of cities, because there were just a lot of spots to place it. Then I started finding out that I kept it, and I didn't even get a chance to play it because there weren't 2 cities in the game with, one adjacent to the same spot. So yeah, this city really went from being the ultimate, mess up your greeneries, Trump Tharsis kind of card to, will I even be able to use this? And it's really never worth playing between 2 of your cities, because a greenery is going to give you more points. So yeah, the best way to play this is to play it between your opponent's city and your city, and it sort of functions like commercial district. It's a little cheaper, it gives you less production. But yeah, you basically steal 2 points, 3 points maybe, which is the same that commercial district does. And it does help you with mayor, so that makes it a little better, and it's cheap. But the thing is, it doesn't really help you with mayor because the spots to place there are rare, and they're even rarer at the beginning of the game when mayor is available. So unless you want to do it on yourself and place 3 adjacent cities, which I would never recommend. Yeah, I find that I don't play this. It does have the potential of you placing it between 2 of your opponent's cities if they leave a vulnerable spot, and also stealing a point from their granaries. So the potential is really high. It can give you a point and steal like 3 from your opponent. So I would say potential is really high, but I rarely play it anymore. Alright, so that's the end of the city tier list. I hope you liked it. Leave some comments below. And yeah, like, subscribe, whatever. And until next time.